We're in a very rough area. There's just constant challenges all around us and in our home. And so I saw no reason to be hopeful, but she did. And I couldn't figure it out in the beginning. Why does she have any hope in this situation? Believe in yourself, because you have this great treasure in your life, and devaluing yourself is actually the opposite of what Buddhism is. That's the battle of practicing Buddhism, is to see your life as this great treasure, and also, by extension, everyone's life, right? It's absolutely this amazing generation of young people coming up that are going to change the world. And they need allies. They need people who've been through these struggles to be there with them. And so I think that's what matters.
From SGI USA, I'm Cassidy Bradford, and this is Buddhability, the weekly series where I talk with Buddhists from all walks of life about the power we each have to change our lives and the world around us. Hi, Cassidy from Buddhability here. If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to subscribe. It'll help the show out, and you'll never miss an episode. If you want more Buddhability content, you can subscribe to our email newsletter in the link below. We put out great content every week. Enjoy the show. Welcome, Jason, to Buddhability. Thank you so much for joining me on your Friday morning. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. And I know that it's going to be something that's, it's deeply personal, and I think will be very encouraging for many people that might be, feel like they're struggling alone or in isolation. So just to kick things off, I'll have you introduce yourself so you can tell me a little bit about who you are and just what your life looks like.
Thank you so much, Cassidy, and so happy to have the opportunity to join and be a part of this. And as you heard, my name is Jason Lyons. I live in Los Angeles. I am an executive at a company that serves autistic children. And lived here almost 20 years now. I'm married, have two wonderful kids, a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old. Just happy to be on the show with you.
Oh, thank you so much. I think, 9 and 6, you probably have your hands full, and it's a lively household, I imagine.
Yeah, they keep us busy.
So, of course, speaking of children, a lot of our focus today will actually be about your own childhood and your adolescence, and then, into young adulthood. So to start, maybe I'll just have you tell me about how your family encountered Buddhism and a little bit about your childhood.
So my parents actually met in the Buddhist community, just attending an activity together, and they actually lived in different places, different parts of the country, but they hit it off, of course, and that brought them together, and they started developing a relationship. And then my dad actually lived in Virginia, and my mom in New Jersey, and she actually moved to Virginia to be together with him. So
then you grew up in Virginia. I think maybe I've driven through Virginia. I don't really know very much about it. What was it like growing up there? Yeah, I mean, Virginia is pretty diverse, I think, in terms of just the experience, depending on where you live. I was born in a very rural part of Appalachia in the mountains, almost on the border of West Virginia and Tennessee, in a town most people have never heard of called Galax, Virginia. So my early years were, kind of rural life, country life. And then I moved to Norfolk, which is a big Navy town on the coast. So definitely a different environment, an industrial town, and much more diverse. It's actually majority minority city there. Oh, wow. That's so interesting. Okay. And much of our conversation today will revolve around family relationships and mental health. So your relationship with your father was a very challenging and very impactful one. So as much as you feel comfortable sharing, do you want to tell me about early childhood and what the household was like with him around? Yeah, I would love to. I mean, I'm very open about this because I think a lot of people struggle with these sort of situations, so I definitely want to share about it. I mean, essentially, my dad, he was this bright, amazing young man, and then, like many people, in his 20s, he developed a mental health issue, developed bipolar disorder, and then, unfortunately, it just really progressed very quickly. This is after my parents got together, and then into their marriage,
he started to lose touch with reality and became pretty abusive, pretty aggressive. And when we were young, it just kind of plateaued to the point where he actually tried to take our lives several times. And my mom, she was such a warrior and very, very determined to transform the situation. And she did, all the social things you would imagine, societal ways to address this. Like she had him get mental health care. She had him put in a mental health facility for a time with his mom's support. Many agencies of the government were involved in supporting our family, but unfortunately it just kept getting worse and worse. And the challenge, obviously, for me as a little kid experiencing this is I just felt completely overwhelmed by it. I was totally hopeless. I had no end in sight. And to be honest, because it was life-threatening abuse, like just on a daily basis, I really felt like something really bad was going to happen. And I remember walking home from school, elementary school, thinking, maybe today is the day that I'm going to die. This is it. And so just this constant fear and anxiety was steeped in my life. And I didn't know what to do. But my mom, she was in our Buddhist community, and she had this conviction and hope and determination that to me seemed out of place, right, for the environment that we were in. We were also we were very poor, we were in a very rough area. There were just constant challenges all around us and in our home. And so I saw no reason to be hopeful, but she did. And I couldn't figure it out in the beginning. Why does she have any hope in this situation? And she would say things like, I know this is so difficult. And, she, of course, she would apologize for the challenges, but she said, somehow we're going to transform this for our family and we're going to become happy. We're going to break through. And I'll be honest, in the beginning, when she said that to me, I'm like, what are you talking about? Right?
Totally.
Something bad is going to happen and we're not going to make it. But I couldn't deny this great determination she had. And so I started trying to figure out what it was and where she was getting it from. And after a while, I understood it was because she was going to these Buddhist activities and practicing. That's where she was deriving that conviction from. And so I started to try practicing Buddhism on my own. I was like 8, 9 years old.
Wow.
And one of the most kind of profound experiences that happened early on with that was that, I would often be alone with my brother, my dad, because my mom worked overnight as a nurse in a hospital. And, it was just very scary because we'd never know when he would just go off the rails. And, often that would happen. And I would usually just fight or run or yell, do whatever I could. But as I had started practicing Buddhism and chanting Nam-myoho-renge-kyo, which is this, great mantra that we practice in the SGI community, affirming our value and this resolve to become happy and win in life, right? So as I started doing that, it became seeped in me. And so this moment I was home with him and he just grabbed me and he was yelling. And usually I would try to escape or something, but I just looked at him and I said this mantra out loud. I said, Nam-myoho-renge-kyo, as loud as I could. And I think I kind of shocked him. He let me go, and he walked away, but he was yelling, he was punching the walls, and I was so nervous. So I started chanting. And I never forget this moment because he got quieter and quieter. And then he sat down behind me and started chanting with me. And, I'm like 8 years old. So I don't need an intellectual explanation of Buddhism at that point. I was like, nothing like this had ever happened, but this changed something in that relationship in that moment. And so I gained a lot of conviction that this is going to help me break through the situation. So that was kind of the beginning of it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. I think some people might think, wow, you were so young to want to practice Buddhism. And something that, I've found talking to people for the podcast, if they had really serious trauma when they were young and they were exposed to Buddhism, they start chanting at that age. And I think we sometimes don't recognize like how much like life and humanity children have and how like deeply they feel. Yes, maybe they haven't, developed to like adulthood, right? But they can still absolutely chant and understand like the value of this practice. So at that point when you started chanting, of course, you saw this like immediate kind of result of your father, shifting his behavior. Were you at that point like, okay, I'm going to start chanting more? And did you see other things like then reflected in your environment?
Yeah. I mean, I think I was motivated because I had no other way, right? I couldn't figure out what else to do. And the only thing that created hope was this example of my mother, that led me to practicing Buddhism. And then once I saw it for myself, the effect, I started doing it regularly. And even my brother and my mother, everyone, we kind of joined in together, and it really became this effort to break through. And the immediate result of that is actually not too long after my father decided to leave. He actually just decided to walk across the country. Like he was really struggling with his mental health. And at that point he became homeless. And, then he returned, and, we had decided to leave, and we spent almost a year kind of living with other people and hiding out a bit because it was very tense and tenuous. But in the long run, it was a good thing because of the abuse, right? The benefit for me of starting to practice was that after that, just like physical injury manifests itself over time, this significant, physical, emotional, mental abuse just started to manifest in my life, especially as I hit like teenage years. I started to struggle. And then, slowly these things came about, it just surfaced in my life. So I developed severe anxiety, then PTSD, just like soldiers in war. So I would wake up every night almost screaming, develop social anxiety, and then, was not able to leave the house sometimes for months at a time. Obviously, that also caused severe depression. I had an eating disorder. I developed all these compulsive behaviors. I mean, it was just this litany of things. And so I started to withdraw because I was so overwhelmed by that and really had no solution. And of course, sought out mental health care and many supports. But the challenge for me was also socially. I was so withdrawn and no one knew how to support me. So one by one, I lost my friends. People kind of distanced themselves from me. But what was amazing, again, is that I was a part of this Buddhist community. And to be honest, rather reluctantly. I was not at first just all into hanging out with other Buddhists or whatever, or anyone for that matter. But they would actually come over and visit me pretty consistently and just encourage me. There was no agenda. They weren't trying to get anything out of me other than just supporting me as a person. And the things they said to me were similar to what my mom said, something about mission in this experience and how, I have a mission through the struggle and I'm going to be able to use it to become happy. And once again, did not believe that. I just was like, what are you talking about? This is terrible. I can't escape this struggle. It just seemed like a prison. And I also very much thought at that point, because I was a teenager, I thought I knew everything, just like a lot of young teenagers, But I was like, I'm going to figure this out, right? I'm going to get myself out of it. I'm going to do whatever I need to do to figure it out. But I couldn't. And I kept kind of building up and then falling apart and building up and falling apart. And so what happened for me is that I just got exhausted with life. And I really withdrew. And I I would come out every now and then and show up and do activities or try to go to school or even into adulthood, try to work. But it would just all, like, the anxiety would come in, the depression would come in, and it just would fall apart over and over. And I really, at that point, just felt like giving up, right? I felt like I can't do this anymore, and I don't know a way out. And of course, I was getting, I tried different supports and traditional supports and therapy and everything. And, I think those things are valuable, especially to find the healthcare that, is supportive for you in that situation. So those things are important, but for me, I wasn't breaking through again, and I felt completely stuck and overwhelmed to the point that I was like, I'm done. I'm not gonna take my life, but I just want to fade away and kind of disappear. That's how I felt.
Yeah, I know that feeling, perhaps not to the, intensity or degree, but I think, anyone who struggles with their mental health, I think that point that you make, that like you just get so worn down, that back and forth of like, okay, this time I'm gonna change it, and then you fall back. It can be so heartbreaking. But I can't imagine, like, for you it's essentially like a lifetime, of this battle at this point. I was wondering whether you felt like angry or misunderstood when Buddhist folks would come to your place and tell you, like, this is actually like your mission. You can create purpose from your life. I imagine, like, for some, if you're really in the depths of suffering, it can feel like, oh, this is just invalidating. Like, you have no idea how hard it is. You're telling me that this has purpose, but like, this is the worst thing anybody could go through. So did you have that kind of battle, or was there always like this maybe deeper part of you that knew that to be true?
I think a few things happened to me during that time, especially with people coming to encourage me or whatever. To be honest, I mean, I don't think I necessarily felt invalidated, but I definitely felt like, you don't understand how hard it is, and but I also felt something from them that I didn't feel from a lot of other people, which was that there was this deeper just sense of support from them. There was no, what's wrong with you? Like, why don't you just get over this, right? It was just like, hey, we're here for you. We're going to keep coming. We got your back feeling. And there was some comfort in that, even though on the surface, I really was difficult with people and pushed back. I was very challenging, to even connect with. So, I mean, even now I have so much gratitude for the people who supported me. But what I think also underlied that sense of like challenge with connecting with others was that because I felt like I was worthless, I wanted them to give up on me. I wanted confirmation from everybody that I was just no good. And I felt like, well, if they give up on me, that's the proof, right? But they just wouldn't. And in some ways, I think I was annoyed, right? That there were people who wouldn't give up. And even though I wanted them to, but obviously that also really saved my life, that I had such a community at such a crucial moment in my youth.
Yeah, I think because at the core of this Buddhist philosophy is that every single person has this potential in their life for Buddhahood, and their life is valuable. And I think because we strive to really believe that, then when you're supporting others, they can feel that. I've had so many times in my life where I felt like just no hope, but then being encouraged by someone, I could feel like, wow, but they really believe in me. Like, they're not just saying that to be nice. They very sincerely like see the possibility for my life and the capability I have. And I think to your point, feeling like, maybe if they can just validate this, that I can like finally stop fighting almost, like, okay, then it'll be totally useless. But because they're persistent, then that brings you to the point that you really can start to break that shell. So, with that, obviously, you are here today. So was there like a culminating point or like a breakthrough kind of moment?
Yeah. So I think there was so much effort behind it and so much encouragement, especially from my mentor, Daisaku Ikeda. But the kind of the culminating moment for me that when I look back, I feel like my life started to take on a different direction, is when I really just gave up in my early 20s and disappeared for a while. This young man, actually, he lived in Maryland, and he was like a Buddhist leader in the community, but it was almost 5 hours away from where I lived, and he was really worried about me, and he was trying to get a hold of me, and I wouldn't answer the phone, and so he drove to my house to encourage me. 5 hours one way, not even knowing if I was home, right? Like, who does that? Because if I didn't answer the door, you would have to drive back. And it was actually good because I also, even though he was calling and I wasn't answering the phone because I was so depressed, when he did come, I was like, I gotta let him in. Like, I can't make this guy go back, right?
Yeah.
And I was just so encouraged by that effort because, like, what does he get out of that, right? He's just doing it because he cares about me. And so I was ready to listen. The two things that I really remember from that encounter that really stuck with me is, one, he shared actually Daisaku Ikeda's encouragement about prayer, but also about believing in ourselves. And he was saying that prayer is this courage to persevere and overcome the lack of confidence in ourselves. And it's the act of impressing in the very depths of our being the conviction that we can change the situation without fail. And he said, believe in yourself because you have this great treasure in your life, and devaluing yourself is actually the opposite of what Buddhism is. That's the battle of practicing Buddhism, is to see your life as this great treasure, and also, by extension, everyone's life, right? And the other thing he said that really made sense, he said, of course, you're not happy and you're struggling. So how can you change that, right? He said, life is cause and effect from the perspective of Buddhism, right? So that means if you really want to become truly happy in this life, you have to work together for the happiness of others. And I was really struck by that. I also resisted it at first because I felt like, what do I have to offer anyone? I'm this like broken person living at home with my parents with no job and, just really struggling. But I think what he said to me at that moment was, maybe that is true. And there's so many other people like that, but they have no community. They have no way to generate hope, right? But you have this great community and philosophy and practice. So why don't you share that, right? And share hope with other people. And so I really felt like, okay, I could do that. And very quickly I realized all my friends, that I had that were willing to be my friends at that point, because I was not a good friend, but all of those people were also just suffering tremendously, right? And going through so many similar things. So I was like, why don't I do that, right? And really become a great friend, especially to repay the great friendship I had experienced over almost a decade of support. And I just started to live that way. And what was amazing is, I think, it's very natural when you're suffering to focus on that. And especially when it's your mental health, you're just steeped in that suffering, and especially it's in your brain, so you're thinking, and all you can think about is your suffering, right? But when I started to think about other people and put my energy towards that and my effort, it was like this veil just kind of was lifted, and all the anxiety and the depression and all these things started to fade away. And of course, I'd been getting wonderful support, healthcare, everything. But I think those things, the goal of physical or mental health care is to get you to kind of stasis, right? But I really believe you need some sort of philosophy or effort to really build on that and become happy. And so I think connecting those two things was really important for me. And once I started to take this action, as what we call like a bodhisattva, right? Someone who really works for the happiness of others, my life just completely transformed in terms of the way I felt about the world and my experience. And as this weight lifted off, I started to be able to do things that I just couldn't do before, like hold down a job, hold down relationships, go to school, right? All these things that were very difficult before. And so over time, it was just this dramatic shift. And I think what that led me to was this conviction that this way of life is really transformative and powerful. And I really determined to live a way of life that is dedicated to working for the happiness of others. And what that sparked for me actually was really important at the time, because one of the things that was really weighing on me was this deep, anger I had towards my father.
Yeah. And
at that point, he had been homeless off and on for over 15 years, and he was really struggling and just suffering. And, I was really angry with him. We had barely spoken, only on a few occasions. And I just started to feel like, though, well, how could I really become happy if my father is just this suffering, miserable person on the streets, And something shifted in me towards him. And I started to feel like, this sense of understanding, I really want to separate this too. Like what being abused as a child, like what he did, that was absolutely wrong. And he was struggling with his mental health. He was really suffering as a person too. And I started to have compassion for that. And what was amazing is when I started to really chant about that, I got this phone call, and my dad was actually in a hospital, and somehow, even though we had no relationship, I was his emergency contact person. But he had fallen off a roof, doing an odd job. And, at first I thought, well, maybe this won't be a bad thing because he'll get some health care. And, but, he had broken some ribs and he was really struggling. But, they found out he was also on a lot of drugs. And so they were just going to kick him out. And, he was in really bad shape. So when I went to see him, something just sparked in me. And I told him, I was like, look, I will let you live with me for a little while to get your life back on track, to heal. But I really want you to do one thing, which is to chant with me and do this Buddhist practice together with me. And of course, he's on and off practiced up to that point. And obviously because of his mental health, sometimes he would struggle with that too. But I really asked him at that point to engage with me in a different way. And so I invited him to live with me for a while.
Okay. So the laughing is like from the shock, sort of, because I can imagine many listeners being like, you what? Like, if I was in that situation, or I have somebody in my life like that, I would never do that. So, like, what made you feel like, okay, this is what I have to do, or this is what I want to do?
I think this very serious determination for his happiness just welled up from within my life, that I wanted him to be able to change the course of his life too. And as a result, my entire family. And I also wanted to believe that a family like mine that was so broken and so much suffering had occurred, right? That could transform. It didn't just have to be this unhappy ending, right? Where we just didn't ever speak again. And I just want to say too, this was a very personal decision. I know how hard it is to face like someone who's abused you. I'm not saying people have to do that, anything. This was a very personal choice I made, right? And to be honest, it was really hard. I would literally have panic attacks around my father, just being near him, because it just brought up so much for me, right? So in that moment, it was very difficult, but it just came out of my life, out of this resolve that I'm going to transform this relationship with him. And it was not easy by any means, but what was amazing is that over time and through this effort of chanting together and connecting around that, he started to kind of level out, and he really started to present completely different and just much calmer. I mean, of course, like, we're not going to magically not have our mental health issue because we chant or anything. I'm not saying that, but just his approach to engaging with other people seemed to change. And I started to have much more normal conversations with him. And one of the things I discovered through that was that he had gotten this engineering degree before his mental health really started to flare up. And I was like, well, why don't you apply for this an engineering job or something? And he applied for a job and got this amazing job working at a shipyard that he then was quickly able to get off the streets, get into a place, and then eventually, he built up this life. He got a car. He was living in a house, got remarried, and to this wonderful woman, and her family moved in with him, and
wow,
he's like living this different life. And then what was even more amazing is, his wife also started practicing, and my dad really started to practice more seriously and regularly. And then at one point, my mom and brother and me and him and his family, we're all like practicing together, and
wow,
we're able to connect and encourage each other. And it just totally shifted. And from this family that was broken to this family that could support and encourage one another, even though we're all very challenged people because of everything we've been through, and it wasn't easy, but it really was complete transformation from this situation of unhappiness to something where everyone could experience and feel joy and connection together. I feel so fortunate. Like, my mom, she lives with me now. She's so happy. Her life is so different than what it was before. And I have the most amazing, incredible wife and just beautiful kids. And, they're all on their own journey, have their own challenges too. My wife too experienced unbelievable challenges as a young woman, but we came from all the suffering and struggle, and now we can have this happy, harmonious family. And again, it's just, I never cease to be amazed by it. And I also feel such incredible gratitude for being able to have a way of being in a philosophy and a practice that's allowed me to have such incredible fortune and joy in my life. So it's, nothing but gratitude for my family.
Such a remarkable transformation. It's kind of mind-blowing to not only transform your own heart, but then see that so clearly reflected in your family. Were there any other things that you noticed changing about yourself throughout this process?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the other beauty of this way of experiencing life and practicing Buddhism, is that it's not self-sacrifice or this kind of just altruistic way of being where you're not thinking about yourself and you're only thinking about others. Mm-hmm. What happened was, as I started to value and treasure other people and work for their happiness, just like this young man had told me, I started to experience joy. I also started to value my own life. There's this idea in Buddhism that your environment reflects your state of being, right? And so as my sense of value developed, my environment also reflected that. And, that showed up in my work, my relationships, everything, right? People started to value me in a different way, and I felt more confident in myself. And to be honest, I wasn't actually seeing how profound this was in the moment, but actually Daisaku Ikeda said this. He said, if you launch 2 satellites into space and you change the trajectory even 1 inch, right, over time they'll be 1 million miles apart. So my life was on this totally different trajectory, and I didn't even realize it, but I could start to see it and feel it and experience it. As a result, I think I started to develop deeper friendships. I just felt more confident. I was able to start having dreams. and actual goals for my life. Like before, I honestly, I didn't have those big goals and dreams that most people have, because I didn't think that was possible for me, Yeah. I even had a therapist one time tell me, you have to manage your expectation about your future. Like, you may not be able to do the things that most people do. And it was just so difficult to hear that, but I also kind of believed it, right? That having a happy life or being successful would not be in the cards for me, and the statistics bear it out, right? Like, people who are severely abused, like close to 90%, they either end up in abusive relationships, or they become abusers, or they're very much struggling to kind of be thriving in their environment, right? But I was able to transform this through this way of being and practicing. And, over time, it just started to grow and grow and grow in terms of how confident I felt about myself and my future and my own value, and how, I felt much more determined to work for others, and felt like I had the ability to do that. Like I could hold that and also take care of myself at the same time, right?
Wow. I've got goosebumps. You can't tell because I'm wearing this sweater, but I mean, it's just really, it's very beautiful and interesting that just the shift in one moment, this one determination, I'm going to support people, and then the decision, I'm going to, fight for my father's happiness. Like, each of those kind of crucial moments then lead to this just drastically different outcome. So it's very easy for us in this world to really limit what we think is possible for ourselves.
Yes.
So one question I have is, did you have moments that you felt like, after maybe your dad had moved in, that you felt like, actually, maybe this isn't possible? Like, did you have to battle with that doubt throughout?
Yeah, all the time. I don't think it was this just sudden shift where everything was like, this is going to happen. It's going to be great. There was a lot of just ups and downs, and, struggles with our relationship. Obviously, I confronted him about things and some of the things that happened. I don't even think he was able to process all of it. I don't know if he even remembered all of it, to be honest. But then I realized, I didn't need that from him necessarily. At least for me, I had become at peace with my experience. And then, for example, the reason why I can talk about it now in such a different way is that through this way of being, and through, even my relationship with him, which just transformed into one of love and support and appreciation over time, even to the last moment of his life, I could feel gratitude for him as my father. But I felt like, just like what everyone had been telling me for years, that this really became part of my mission as a person, to use this experience that was so painful and difficult to encourage and support other people, right? And so because of that, through those ups and downs, what I noticed is that kind of my experience of overwhelm and anxiety and going into depression, it just started to lessen. And also it started to get shorter, those time periods where I felt that way, right? Or have the panic attacks or all of that, until the point where it just faded away, most of the experience of that from my youth is just gone, especially the PTSD. I don't have that anymore. It was amazing for me that it just very naturally started to shift over time. Of course, again, getting the right support, but then also just being able to heal through this process of practicing and living in this way was really important for me. And it also helped me shift my focus from just feeling overwhelmed and in pain to being able to do something with my life. For example, I think the other thing that shifted for me was just this passion to help young people who were suffering. And just this absolute resolve that I would be an ally, a friend, a great supporter to people who are experiencing, all of this stuff, right? Mental health challenges, abuse, like living in poverty, you know, or just not having great support as a young person. And so, like, I started to work in schools, became an educator, and then eventually just really developed this passion for education. You know, I was an artist too, so I was always working in art schools too, creative, like using creative energy to heal. But then I determined to be like an administrator, and then I ended up becoming a school principal, and eventually, you know, overseeing quite a few alternative schools in the role that is equivalent to a superintendent of a school system, you know, and just working directly with young people who were experiencing the exact same sort of challenges that I face, right? And I think what was so helpful for me in terms of being able to support them is that I could understand what it's like to be in that moment and just be there, and also know that they can absolutely change it, and to be that hopeful person for them, just like so many others were for me, that without, I don't think I would be here, you know?
Yeah, this aspect of the karma of your life is actually the mission or the purpose of your life is so empowering. And thinking about your experience in particular, I'm reflecting and thinking like the depth of like suffering and pain equals the like magnitude of hope and encouragement you can give to people. Daisaku Ikeda says that, you know, people that suffer the most are the ones who deserve to be the happiest. And yes. Actually, I would cling to that many times when I just felt in the life state of hell, like, okay, that I deserve to be so happy, even if I didn't always think it was possible. Yeah, it's just really incredible to have like, yeah, this origin of your life then create like this beautiful, powerful, value creative life where not only have you supported your family and now, you know, then you support others in work. Yeah, it's really remarkable. I was wondering as you were sharing, like, you know, supporting all of these young people, how do you maintain hope and belief in the capacity of their life? You know, I think sometimes for those of us that support people that are struggling, it can be hard at times or very painful. Like, wow, I don't want them to be going through this. You know, how did you use your practice, you know, throughout your career?
I think what I saw early on, like one of my first jobs in education was at a Title I school, which is a school usually in a struggling community, doesn't have a lot of resources. Many of the kids are at risk. And so, you know, working with those children, and like many of them didn't live with their parents because of certain struggles they had, right? Like some of them, their parents were on drugs or struggled with abuse themselves or in jail. And what I realized through Buddhism, right, what I was saying before, is that every human being has this unbelievable value and potential, right? And this isn't just in terms of what they can produce, you know, in the future, right? Like their career or whatever, but just intrinsically, right? And so believing that is so important. And I think that allows you to work for others in a different way when you truly believe that. And so what I saw with many of them is just really being determined to believe in their value and see it, and also help them to see it and their you know, their great potential, and that they're treasures. It shifted their lives. And so some of them, they felt like, for example, the only way they could get out of this situation was like becoming an athlete or whatever, right? But then they started to see, no, there's other qualities I have, right? Like, so I would try to do things like we would teach them how to write poetry. And, you know, one kid became like a poet laureate as a teenager and went on to a great school. But he developed this great sense of conviction in his ability to, you know, again, like encourage other people through his words, right? So I think believing in that is really important. And what I experienced when I was young in the Buddhist community is that was the kind of the motivation for other people to support me, because it took almost a decade for me to transform, right? if people really didn't believe in my value, I think they would have given up, you know? And I think a lot of times when we see, especially young people suffering, it's easy to give up on them or think they're just, you know, it's out of my realm of ability to support this person. But to be honest, I especially this generation who's experiencing so much challenge, right? Who I think they have such an incredible mission for the future, but I really feel like we have to believe in them and support them and encourage them to realize how crucial their mission is, because we're at a turning point, right, in society and humanity, and it's absolutely this amazing generation of young people coming up that are going to change the world. And they need allies. They need people who've been through these struggles to be there with them. And so I think that's what matters. And I think when you do that, people respond to you in a different way too, you know. And what I love about the Buddhist community is it's really, the basis of it is just pure, genuine friendship, right?
Yeah.
There's no agenda, you know, any of that, right? It's just people who care about each other, but are willing to go above and beyond just like hanging out, right? It's more like, hey, we're gonna work together for each other's happiness, right? And it's a struggle. It's not easy sometimes, but I'm invested in that. And so having that type of community and that type of friendship, especially when you're young, can change everything, you know? And so I think that's what I'm really committed to for the future.
Wow. Yeah, I think young people that are in this Buddhist community, like, I think I'm certain that, you know, any of them listening know exactly that kind of friendship and feeling of care. I struggled so much with friendship, really like my whole life until college. And college is when I had sincere friends in this Buddhist community. And I think not only were those friendships just like so incredible, I also learned how to be a good friend, you know, not to be afraid to like share real parts of myself. I was the kind of person that like super avoided conflict and like I just wanted everybody to be happy. And I realized like, oh, that's not real, you know, like I need to be able to be like all parts of myself. And I think the incredible thing about this community is like there's this appreciation and recognition of that, you know, like we have these very full, complex inner lives. And so we're not always going to be like the most joyful version of ourselves. We're not always going to be the funny version of ourselves. You know, like we embrace each other in all of that. So much of what I'm hearing about your experience today is like, one, your ability to like, through your determination, really challenge everything, and the power of very seriously believing in the, you know, capacity of one person, how that can change their entire life. You know, I think that's so, so powerful. And I would hope for anybody listening that's, you know, has somebody in their life that they're trying to support, this can also really encourage them, you know, not to give up, because there will be, you know, that moment that they can have that shift. So I think to, you know, kind of wind down, I have one last question, a piece of advice, and I think you've probably answered it in many ways throughout the interview, but I'm wondering what advice you would give or encouragement to a young listener who really feels stuck in their situation, whether it's, you know, they feel overwhelmed with, you know, their mental health or their family relationships they feel are never going to change. What would you say to anyone listening in that situation?
I think I would say what people said to me for almost a decade, right? That all of these painful, troubling, difficult things you're experiencing in your youth that probably seem impossible to overcome or just overwhelming, they are part of your great experience and mission in this life. And you do have a mission. And especially like from the perspective of Buddhism, right? You are here to become happy. You're here to win. You're here to transform something fundamental in the world, right? Like we all have some aspect of life we're here to really transform and challenge and change. And I think you got to believe that. And, you know, one thing that Daisaku Ikeda says is like, hope is a decision. And so I think at some point we got to decide, even if it doesn't look like in my environment there's any reason to have hope, right? Like my mom, I am going to decide to be hopeful and move my life in the direction that I want it to go, right? And really become happy. And I think there is absolutely a way for everyone to do that. There is no person on this earth who cannot change their situation. I really believe that. I just want people to have that great hope for their future. And, you know, if you experienced things that are similar to what I experienced, the abuse and the mental health struggles and the anxiety, you know, it's really a journey, right? It's not like it's just going to change overnight and everything's going to be fine, right? You have to really have compassion for yourself and be willing to go on this journey of transformation with this goal in mind, like knowing that what seems like so overwhelming now, one day will seem like a dream, you know? It will seem like something like, I can't believe I was suffering that much, right? So I just want everyone to have that, especially right now. That's what people need. And I know that there are so many people who have gone through these struggles that have the ability to also encourage people who maybe don't have anyone in their life that can encourage them right now. And so being those people is really crucial too at this time.